Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that feels really good. Because after all, that's what we ultimately want. We simply want to feel good. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. Amy will be with us after the commercial break. And today, we're talking about this thing called gluten. What is it? What does it mean to be gluten intolerant? Is it even a real thing? She's going to let us know. And what do you do if you can't have gluten? Remember, health is the first wealth, so stick around because you're going to learn something. So, before we go any further, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email those directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. Hey, look, you don't need to suffer and try to figure it all out on your own. There are answers and solutions and ways to get unstuck and move forward powerfully. I also want to remind you that you can visit me at my website, fletcherellingson.com. There you're going to find a number of free resources that you can check out, and you can get a free copy of my ebook or take the happiness quiz. There's a cool quiz there. You can get a bird's eye view of how your life is going, and I'll personally send you feedback on the results. And you can also check out any of my podcasts there. It's a great way to stay in this personal development conversation, which to me, if you ask me, it's the most important conversation. Now let's get some answers to one of the emails for today. It says, "Hello, Fletcher. I will get straight to my question. How do you stop bad behaviors? I have certain behaviors that I don't like. When I do them, I get really upset. Others get upset, and it's really bad all around. I'm not talking about abuse, but I judge and make rude comments that upset my family and friends. It just comes out, and then I feel terrible. I try to make it into a joke, but it's too late. How do I stop being such a jerk? How do I stop opening my mouth and saying stupid stuff? I see my kids doing the same thing, and I feel terrible knowing that they probably got it from me." Signed, Peter. Hey, Peter. First off, way to get into action and reach out for support. Remember, people who ask for help, people who ask for advice, counsel, or support are strong. And that means you are strong. So first of all, I want you to know that I hear you. You feel like your mouth is running off and saying all sorts of stuff without your permission, without your approval or consent. It just comes out, and then you feel embarrassed. You try to turn it into a joke, but it's, like you said, it's too late. And I hear that you want to stop judging. You want to stop saying stuff that doesn't serve the group that you're talking to or doesn't serve you. And like you said, you want to stop being a jerk. I can understand that. So here's the thing. And I want to make sure that you're ready for this. I want you to really hear me from a place of being open, because your mind is going to want to reject what I'm about to say. It's going to want to reject what I'm about to say. So get ready, because here it is. You can't stop. You heard me correctly. You cannot stop. And here's why. Because you can't stop anything. Now, let that one sink in for a minute. Like I said, your mind's going to reject that, and we're just taking our time with this because it's a foreign concept, but you can't actually stop behaviors. Now, I get that you're probably sitting there listening and saying, what does he mean? Of course you can stop. You can stop anything. So what I'm about to say may sound like a semantics game, but I'm asking you to indulge what I'm about to say, because when you get the distinction, it's quite profound. So I'm holding this NCW coffee mug in my hand. I'm holding it. And if you ask me to stop holding it, I can't stop holding it. But what I can do is I can release my grip. What I can do is let the momentum of the cup take it down through my hand. but I can't stop holding it. But I can release my grip. I can let it go. You see, we can't stop anything. And again, you might, well, yeah, of course we stop. We stop the car at a stop sign. Do we actually stop it, or are we coming to a standstill? We're doing something, we're applying a brake. We're coming to no motion. And then we're going again. See, our mind doesn't really get the concept of stopping. But what it does get is doing. Our mind is a goal-achieving machine. When you say stop being a jerk, your mind doesn't really hear the word stop. It just hears be a jerk. It becomes focused on this thing called your sentence, I need to stop being a jerk, but your mind doesn't really understand it. Instead, we can focus on the thing that our mind loves to do. Positive commands. Start talking in a way that's supportive of the people around you. Start encouraging others. Start showing compassion. Start getting curious about people. Start loving. Start complimenting. Start appreciating. You see, your mind hears those things and it understands how to do that. Now, it'll take practice for sure. It's the stop being a jerk. How about start being a wonderful person? Start being kind, right? These things our mind can understand. And you have lots of examples in your life. So if you're of the opinion like, I'm not quite sure how to do that, look around you. There are so many people in the world who are doing these things that feel good. So I know this is a kind of a weird concept and it sounds like semantics, but I encourage you to really consider it. It's because it's much more than semantics. When you want to stop something, let that now trigger this next question. Oh, what can I start doing? Right? I can't stop eating. I can't stop smoking. Oh, how about if I begin to do something else to replace those things? That's where the focus is. Remember, whatever you focus on, you feel. Whatever you focus on expands. And whatever you focus on, you begin to attract into your life. So I'm focusing on what I can do, what I can say, how I can love, how I can support. And isn't that a funner game to play? Doesn't that feel a lot better? And like I said at the top of the show, all we want to do is we want to feel good. So the question becomes, what can I do that's going to feel good for me and the people around me? Peter, thanks for your courage for writing in and bringing this conversation to the table. I know you can do this, and I believe in you. All right, you guys, we're going to be back after the commercial break. We're talking with Amy. We're talking about gluten. Stay with us. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. We're here with my favorite person, right to my right, Amy. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. Mm-hmm. Hey, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about gluten.
Gluten.
We've talked about it too much this morning already.
All right, so the first obvious question, what is it? Because we see it all, hear about it, it's in a lot of things. What is it?
So gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, barley, and rye in its like original form. And then obviously you could then extrapolate those to things that wheat, barley, and rye are in, like breads, pastas, cereals, baked goods, donuts, cakes, beer. It can also be added to some cosmetics, vitamins, medications, drinks.
So many things.
Yeah, a lot of different things.
It's very versatile. Why is it in so many things? What does it do?
Well, it creates structure and texture. So it's actually what is responsible, especially if you're doing like a kneaded bread, it then creates that kind of stretchy chewiness not stretchiness to the dough, chewiness to the bread, and it provides this structure to have trapping of air bubbles that helps dough maintain its shape during baking. So definitely makes really good bread.
Got it. All right, so there's this thing called gluten intolerance, and there's also this thing called celiac disease. What's the diff?
So yeah, they're very different. It's similar in the fact that both people in that category with gluten intolerance and celiac disease don't eat gluten or shouldn't eat gluten. But people with celiac disease have an autoimmune response to gluten. So that means that their body is trying to fight gluten like it would a foreign object. And this causes inflammation in the entire digestive tract. And this is due to an abnormal gene. It's something that you can test for it with someone's blood. So you actually have antibodies to certain things that are fighting the gluten. So it's something that is a genetic condition. So it can run in the family, and it's something that you can test for via blood. And frequently, if the person doesn't know they have celiac disease, like I had a patient who I diagnosed maybe in her 50s, 40s, and she was anemic, iron deficient, her vitamin D was very low. So because your intestinal tract is inflamed, you actually aren't able to absorb some vitamins, and they're frequently bleeding a bit and don't even know it. So it can be quite severe, celiac disease. Yes. So gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity, people call it that as well, that basically that's just where they have a reaction to gluten, but it's kind of an immune reaction or inflammatory reaction, but not in that way. So they don't feel good, but it's not something that you can test for in the blood. It's not something that you can really specifically test for in genetic testing either. Okay. It's basically like the body doesn't do well with it, but there's not something you could put your finger on exactly to test for it. So do we know who would be susceptible to that then? So it could also potentially run in the family. I know I did when I did the 23andMe gene, and then I sent my gene testing results to something else, like a nutritional thing. But even in 23andMe, I think it said that I was likely to have gluten issues. So it's more common in women, and which a lot of immune-related things are. And so some people are born with it, some people develop it. So there's not really a good way to know. Okay. Yeah. And how prevalent is this? How many people have this? It's pretty common. So it's about 6% of the U.S. population, which is about 20 million people. And there is some discussion as to why that is, because especially people who have been on this planet for several decades in this country, it's like, well, why wasn't this a thing before? There's reading and information that's really beyond my understanding, but it sounds like there's maybe this one compound that's in gluten that there's more of it than there used to be, because of how we farm and how we do different things, that maybe it's kind of been bred into the gluten because, anyway, I don't need to get into it. But there may be more of this one compound that's in gluten now that's causing more reactions. Got it. And are you able to articulate what causes the intolerance? Yeah, it's not really that well understood. Like I said, it might be related to this. Maybe it might be more common because of our food has changed, but it's basically like that. It's twofold. One is that it might be that there's something that's not digesting well, so it kind of stays in your gut. So some people with gluten intolerance have more gastrointestinal issues, and then other people have more body aches and stuff. So there might also be a little bit of inflammation that causes what's called a leaky gut. Got it. All right. That does not sound fun. That look good at all. Should we take a break? We should take a break. Let's take a break, then we'll come back and we're going to talk a little bit about your experience having some gluten sensitivities and what there is to do about it. Yeah. All right, stay with us. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. We're here with Amy and we're talking about gluten, gluten-free, gluten intolerance. And so probably everybody wants to know that are listening, what are the symptoms of gluten intolerance? Yeah, so gluten intolerance, people can have abdominal pain, bloating, brain fog, kind of trouble concentrating, can have fatigue, joint pain, skin rash, nausea. I mean, it can be kind of variable, it can be vague, can be
It's a
severe.
lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff. Like I know some people that have more GI symptoms, again, like cramping or pain or bloating or reflux or so it's very variable, and it basically, you wouldn't necessarily even know that you have it until you, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Yeah.
I want to just pause momentarily and say, because I think when this was all coming out or getting more prevalent, I mean, I think a lot of people poo-pooed it or like, gluten intolerant, it's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, people have these real symptoms, and we're going to get to it later, but when they do something about it, they feel better.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
So how is this diagnosed then?
Yeah, so like I said, I think a lot of times your doctor might rule out celiac disease by doing a blood test to make sure that you don't have celiac disease. And if that's negative, then the only way to really know that you're gluten intolerant is to give up gluten. And so you usually need to do it for about 6 weeks. And then it'd be good because life is busy and people are doing different things. It'd be good to keep track of how your symptoms are, what symptoms you were having, and how you felt. What I think is can be slightly confounding, confusing this picture, is if you're then giving up baked goods, breads, pastas, like, are you feeling better because you're eating less carbs, or are you feeling better because you're eating less sugar? Like maybe if you're gluten-free, you're not eating the donuts at work. And so it's definitely can be an intermixed picture for sure.
Yeah,
and it's not black and white diagnosis.
Which is why you need to give it a good amount of time without it, right? The 6 weeks is.
Yeah, and some people might
suggested.
even reintroduce it and be like, how do I feel with this?
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about because this is something that's real in your life. So
yes, hello, I'm gluten intolerant.
Yeah, so just share a little bit about how your experience has been.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, when you experience something yourself, you have a bit more understanding and more compassion and obviously more experience with it. So for me, I've been gluten-free for almost 12 years now. It'll be 12 years in like 2 months, early next year. So I was having some brain fog and body aching. I felt like I just had the flu all the time. I just felt achy and tired. I mean, I also was a busy physician taking call, had, 2 young kids at home and all that. But I wasn't sure, what was going on, but I eventually went to talk to somebody about it. And then when I stopped eating gluten, it went away. Obviously I still was a busy working mom, taking call and being up and delivering babies and all that stuff. So I was tired, but I didn't have that kind of dragging feeling, and I didn't have the body aches anymore. And then obviously, since you live with me, there are some times that I do have some gluten. I mean, someone brought homemade empanadas to work, and I'm like, that's something that I'm gonna eat a little bit of that. And I do okay. But I know it was maybe last year we went away for the weekend, and I ended up having multiple things in one day because they looked good and sounded good and I wanted to eat them. And I don't usually do that. And I ended up really feeling achy for a couple of days afterwards. And I think the other interesting thing that people have talked about is that, and I mentioned that our farming in the U.S. has changed. And so there might be something about this pest-resistant wheat that we have cultivated in our country that other countries don't use. And so there is some talk, and I felt the same way that when I was over in France, where my dad used to live, that I could eat the bread there without having that issue. So again, it's kind of on a spectrum, but for myself, and I have one of my close friends that's also gluten-free, and she and I both, we cheat sometimes, and we just hope we don't pay. And luckily for me, I don't get like really bad gastrointestinal issues. I can just get really achy and tired.
Got it. So people who are thinking that this may be going on for them, and then they hear you saying, well, shoot, I got to cut out bread and pasta and beer, and what? Can you address that?
Yeah, I don't have a good beer substitute because I don't drink beer, but nothing against beer. I just don't drink beer. So yeah, there's so much out there now. I mean, so much. And as people know who ever go to the grocery store or whoever on Amazon or whatever, there's so much out there. So, we've gotten really used to it. I tend to eat I don't do that well with corn either because I'm just have a specialness about me in a way that's annoying. So we have pastas that are lentil-based pastas, and you get those at Walmart or Safeway, and
those are pretty tasty.
they're really good. And so there's lots of pasta alternatives. There's corn, rice, they're lentil-based. Then there's all kinds of breads, although I've been making my own bread lately, and it's really good, and it uses sorghum flour and rice flour. And so there's all kinds of cookbooks I have a cookbook that's gluten-free artisan baking, and you make there's this yummy like French loaf in it, and there's all kinds of options out there. So for bread, we either make our own or I buy it at the store, which is fine. It's definitely less moist and like yummy textured than gluten bread. And then for treats, it definitely helps me stay away from almost all treats at work, which is a good thing for me. But I do all kinds of baking, as you know.
Yeah.
With gluten-free flours or mixtures of flours. You can use almond flour. And so I have I have not been starving.
Yeah. And we also sometimes make like pasta we use spaghetti squash as a substitute, or we used to do zucchini curls in place of pasta. Because once you put the pasta sauce on it, I mean, that's what has all the flavor and it tastes really good.
Yeah.
So there's lots of substitutes that are available to you.
But I think I would just encourage people that are feeling. I think we underestimate. Well, I know we underestimate the impact that our diet has on our health. And I've had multiple patients over the years do what's called an anti-inflammatory diet that have chronic pain or joint pain, or people might be suffering from brain fog or trouble concentrating or fatigue or body aches. And I'm not encouraging you to diagnose yourself. I would encourage you to go talk to somebody. But you can Google anti-inflammatory diet. One of the things that people do is it's no gluten, and so it's something that you can easily try. There's so much out there that can help support you just at the regular grocery store, and it's not like it used to be very expensive. It's just really not much more expensive than regular stuff these days. And
and would you agree too that I feel like the quality and the flavors have
for sure
improved.
I would say store-bought gluten-free cookies are not good, but homemade ones are. And so I think if you just decide to do it for 6 weeks, and then if it's not clear if it's sugar or gluten, you could try putting one back in and see what happens. But because a lot of times when you cut out the gluten, you frequently cut out a lot of sugar in your diet. But it really impacts your body, and we underestimate that, and we really are the product of what we put in our body. So it's a good thing to think about.
Also, real quick, foods that do not have gluten: vegetables, no gluten.
Right.
Meat, no gluten.
Fruit,
no gluten.
Right, like eggs, nuts, seeds.
So in our home, we eat a lot of vegetables and fruit. And
nuts.
And nuts, yeah. And so
and rice.
So there's lots of food that you can still eat. It may feel a little uncomfortable to change your diet.
Yeah, for sure.
But you will acquire new tastes, and you'll open yourself up to like a lot of variety.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gluten-free, and
I'm not.
Neither are the kids. So it's not something I would necessarily say to do if you have no reason to. But if you're not feeling good in some way, it's definitely worth a try.
Yeah. Really good. Anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then you know what it's time to do. It's time to get out there. Be a source of kindness. Be a source of contribution. And you do have something to offer this world, and we believe in you.